live at the Montreal International Auto Show, day one, and already it is full here. A lot of activity, people crowding around the Tesla behind me. We have a lot to get to. Joining me right now are Jim and Liz Leggett, who are journalists and photojournalists for Driving.ca. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
So let's get right to the meat of the matter. So we have several new cars, 3 North American premieres at this year's show. We're going to show you some pictures of those cars right now, including debuting with the Tesla, which is parked behind me. And I have to tell people, if you come to see the Tesla today, you can climb in it, you can poke around, you can poke under it, and yes, you can even bring your kids. And looking at photos of this, we can see it is a beautiful car with beautiful lines, and we'll touch on some of the specificities of this car. Jim, you were talking about how this has 2 motors this year?
Yes, this particular model is their new one. It's the P85D, and the difference is there are 2 electric motors instead of just 1.
Here we see the Alfa Romeo, another performance vehicle. Yeah. And when we talk about the Tesla and the Alfa Romeo, those differ very much from, for instance, the Mazda 2, which is of course going to be more economical, and somebody if you're looking for a very different automobile experience. Liz, what are some of your impressions of these cars?
I'm finding that the lines more and more, they have these long lines, these kind of race-inspired lines, where a car is not, it can be a compact car, but it's not these square, boxy kind of style cars anymore. Now we have hatchbacks like the Mazda that it's longer, and it doesn't necessarily look like a small little kind of square car. They have that line to it.
Okay.
It's nice.
Coming back to the Tesla, Jim, you were talking about the 2 motors. Now that means that there is a lot more power, right?
A lot more power. It now has over 690 horsepower. The motors can run independent of each other, so that also gives all-wheel drive when you need it.
Okay, so does that mean that it also gives you more distance as well?
No, with power comes a cost, and
right.
If you play with that horsepower, the mileage is going to be less. But right now it will go over 400 kilometers an hour in normal driving.
Okay, so it's much like a traditional engine. Is the faster you want to go to Toronto, the more often you'll have to fill up the tank.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, and Liz, when you look at these performance vehicles, like specifically the Tesla or the Alfa Romeo, what attracts your eye as a photographer?
Oh man, definitely like a car like the Alfa Romeo. It's like, oh cool, they're back again. I would love to like shoot a car like that, put it in any setting, and those, as I said earlier, those lines, you can play with it. You can shoot it from low and it still looks nice and long. And so as a photographer, visually, the cars are very appealing. So to a common, consumer, having a car that's useful but also has that kind of aesthetic is always a plus. It's always a plus.
And illustrating, especially when you look at the Tesla, the Alfa Romeo, and the Mazda 2, that really illustrates that there is a niche car for every market, because everybody is looking for something specific to their lifestyle and something specific to their needs. So when people come here, you would agree that each of these cars are very much in competition within their class. For instance, the Mazda 2 has a lot of things going for it that are appealing to people looking for a car in that market.
Their fuel mileage, also the eco-friendly part of it. People are not interested in how fast it goes. They want to commute with the car, so they don't want to pay a lot for fuel. They can park it easily. That's why you go for a Mazda 2.
And we talk about the dreamer in me looks at a car like the Alfa Romeo and says, okay, it may not have sliding doors and accommodate popcorn on the floor for my kids, but there's a long tradition of the Alfa Romeo and cars of that sort, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And when you talk about the history of it, you can look at the Alfa Romeo, and what are some of the inspirations and the specs of it that really attracts people to a car like that?
The styling, it's gorgeous. I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful car. And it also handles very well. So you look at that, you could drive to Monaco, or at least pretend you're driving to Monaco when you're driving in Laval.
Okay. We also have a lot of features here. One of the fantastic vehicles we have at the show this year is also the Magnum NK5, and we are lucky to have with us the designer of that car. We have Bruno Saint-Jacques, we'll invite to join us on the plateau right now. Bruno, thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Okay, so I'm going to start with a question. Being a lay person, you designed a fantastic car like the Magnum, we'll see some photos of it soon, is how do we even begin to design a vehicle like this?
Well, first of all, we've been in the business of building race cars for many years, since the late 60s. So we do have a large expertise in this field. And we wanted to design something a little different this time around, being a car for performance enthusiasts, not just drivers.
Here we see pictures of it. It's a beautiful vehicle. I hope you don't mind me saying it's a little bit reminiscent of the Batmobile, the original Batmobile.
It could be featured in a movie, that's for sure. It does have a very unique look, a very futuristic look. It's aggressive, it's stylish, it's also aerodynamically very efficient. It's a wonderful car to drive as well.
Okay, let's start with you, Jim. Of course, being I'm not somebody who has an expertise in vehicles, but I look at that and I'm immediately impressed, and I immediately want to jump behind the wheel and see really what it can do if I can handle it. What are your impressions of the vehicle?
Well, I think Bruno's being rather modest. The heritage of his father was building formula cars, which were the first that Gilles Villeneuve drove in racing. And this is a track car for the pure driving experience. But you don't have to be Gilles Villeneuve to enjoy it. It's very lightweight. It's very quick, and the whole thing is the experience of driving a car. Very opposite to the autonomous cars we're hearing a lot about, where people don't really want to drive themselves.
Right.
This is the polar opposite, and it's built just for the track, but I'd love to drive it myself.
Okay, and Liz, you have sort of the artist's eye. It's easy to be instantly impressed, but are there specific things in this vehicle that you pick up on that, aside from just being blown away by the look of it when you walk on the floor, you notice?
It almost reminds you of like a McLaren, you know, like with those long lines and that obvious race history that you can see. You don't have to be told that it was, you know, involved with people who built race cars. You can see it from the way it looks. And the idea of shooting that car out on a track or out on a setting in the country or something like that car's just beautiful, and you can shoot it anywhere and it will come through for sure.
Okay. Bruno, it's a very tall order. You sit down to design a vehicle like this. What are some of the challenges that you have to overcome?
There's many challenges. I would say the largest one is to make everything work. You design everything, you do a lot of work on the computer, and then you build parts and everything, but you never quite know how it's going to run in real life. And we were very lucky not lucky, we worked very hard to develop a car that worked out really good the first time we took it out on the track.
When you look at that, you were obviously very close to the project for a very long time, and I know anybody who is close to something from an artistic point of view or design point of view, you sometimes lose focus. So now you've stepped back, the car has been revealed to the public, it's been analyzed by the experts. When you see those first images of the car released to the public, what's your second impression?
It confirms what we liked about the car. We really like the look of it, the performance obviously, but the reaction from the people is very encouraging, and you hope people will like it, but people love it, so it's very impressive.
Now this is obviously very niche, Jim. You're talking about the performance, and it is a driver's car. If you're somebody who's used to minivans and compact cars, and you're trying to get across to people how special a vehicle like this is and what there is to appreciate it, to try to pull them in and have an understanding of that, what are some of the fine points?
Well, it is a car for the enthusiast. I don't really think the average minivan driver that's not really what they're looking for. This is very tightly focused, but it's world class. I mean, this is something that it's as good as anything out there from the Lamborghini, Ferrari, Porsche, Audi. I'm sure it would actually beat them on the track.
Okay.
This is
so Bruno, going forward, what are your hopes for this vehicle?
Well, we just got it out there to the public, showing it around and doing demos. We've started taking pre-orders, so we are setting up production right now. We're looking at 10 cars for the first year, and then we want to ramp up to 20, 30 cars a year, accessing larger markets across overseas as well, Europe, Asia, things like that. So looking ahead for a bright future.
I wish you best of luck. Thank you very much for taking the time with us today.
All right, thanks.
One of the great things about the auto show is it is so easy to reach out to the experts and to reach out to the car manufacturers. One of the things you get to do too is we are asking people to ask questions of the experts on camera. So we have one of those questions ready to go for our experts. Are you ready?
I'd love to know how much it would cost to modify a car like that. Just an exotic car, because the modifications must be out of the roof.
So the question was the cost of being able to modify a car. When you talk about the cost of modifying a car, what are we looking at?
Really, it depends on what you want to do and how deep your pocket is. You can do something, just wheels and tires, which will change the look of your car. Maybe the exhaust, $1,000, $2,000. If you want to put a supercharger, turbochargers, it's going to cost a lot more money. So the faster you go, the more it's going to cost you. But it's basically unlimited.
Right, and we saw a very specific paint job, right, on that car.
Yes.
So what do we know about that paint job? What do you see when you look at a paint job like that?
Well, that paint job is actually a wrap. So what they do is it's almost like a big sticker that you put over your car, and it protects your original paint. So it gives you the option of customizing your car. It's not too expensive, but compared to painting your car, but the options are limitless. You can come up with a pattern and have it printed on this and cover your car. So customizing your car is a very personal thing, and everyone wants their car to be a bit different. And it's very feasible to do if you're not changing the mechanical side of it. If you're not putting a turbocharger or anything like that, then you can actually have a lot of fun with it.
Now, we should specify, I would imagine, now, while this is a wrap that goes around the car, there are a lot of do-it-yourselfers out there, some of whom are better than others at modifying their vehicle.
Yes.
There are the right ways and the wrong ways to go about doing things.
Well, in Quebec, we have very strict laws on what you can and cannot do to modify your car. It's basically about safety. So you cannot lower the suspension to where it hits the ground. You cannot, have an exhaust, a straight pipe. You can't over-tint your windows. So I would advise you find out what is legal, what is not legal before you go and spend your money at the speed shop. But there is a lot that you can do and a lot you can do yourself.
Okay, I'm going to throw you curveballs here. We have a little bit of time to be able that I can ask you if there's any vehicles that caught your eye specifically or anything that impressed you specifically about a vehicle.
As far as concept cars in Montreal or in the performance zone?
Let's say in the performance
In
zone.
the performance zone, wow, there's a lot. There's a lot of very nice cars, from a rat rod style pickup truck to a drift car.
Right.
But for me, my personal style, I like the older stuff. There's a nice blue Willys coupe, or the rat rod truck would be my choice. Yeah.
Ken, when we were talking about the performance zone, that is an area where you can see some old modified vehicles dating back to the 20s and the 30s, as well as some of the newer vehicles. And Liz, you said you were talking about rat rods earlier, and my question to you was, what is a rat rod?
Well, a rat rod would be something like a hot rod, but when you're customizing it, you go something a little bit more with patinaed paint, bare metal, rust. You kind of try to either emulate or keep the years of weathering that it appears on a vehicle, just so you modify it so that it works good, but it still looks like it has that history. And in Montreal, we actually have very good, talented artists. So we have someone like Remo, who's up in the performance zone, who's a painter who does like that kind of Southern California panel painting for lowriders. So it's really kind of limitless. If you want to go into the custom car world, there's a lot of different tastes and options that you can take. Yeah.
What I always find interesting when you look at some of those older cars, especially from the 20s and the 30s, it's almost like clothing. It's everything old is new again, right? Because we went through the 70s and the 80s, where 60s and 70s, everything was boxy and hard lines. Then you look at those, you go, oh, well, that doesn't look all that different from some of the things we're seeing today. What are some of the links you see between cars from 80 years ago and cars today?
Well, funny, the hot rod has influenced a concept car at the Ford booth called the Rip Rod.
Right.
And if you go look at that, it's basically a cross between a Baja dune buggy and a little hot rod, chopped roof and everything. It's painted up with the Hot Wheels logo, and people just love this thing. It's a crazy little car.
That is classic. It's a little bit bigger than the one you might have been pushing around your carpet when you were 5 years old. Okay, we do have another question that somebody was brave enough to ask us on camera. Let's take a listen.
Par rapport au rag road, dans le fond, est-ce qu'il y a des modifications qui sont préférables de mettre sur certaines voitures, ou c'est vraiment, tu peux faire ce type de modifications-là, peu importe le modèle?
Okay, that's an important question, especially now that I know what a rat rod is. I'm going to feel like an expert and use it in my sentence. He was asking about the legalities, basically, of what you're allowed to and not allowed to do. We touched on that a little bit, but there is a lot to cover. For instance, you had mentioned earlier about tinted windows.
Yeah, there's tinting your windows. In Quebec, we're very kind of strict about things like that. So as long as you stay within the guidelines that are laid out, like you can't lower your car too much, it can't be too loud. You got to make sure that we're not allowed running fenderless, for example. So a traditional hot rod, a lot of the time you'll see like the body without the fenders over the wheels. That is not allowed in Quebec. So there's little things like that, but changing the type of wheels you have, the rims, certain stylistic things you can change, but you always got to stick within those guidelines, or else you'll be pulled over quite a bit, and that's not as much fun.
Let me ask you, Jim, if you can tell me, when we talk about performance,
Yes.
Are there limits to what sort of performance modifications you can make to your car, and also where can people find out what is legal and what is not legal?
If you go, well, we'll start with the second question. At the SAAQ website, there is a brochure that talks about modified cars. As far as what you can do mechanically, let's say in the engine, again, it's a matter of budget. I mean, you can swap engines, you can put on forced like turbochargers, superchargers. There's no limit, there's no law. You could have 1,200 horsepower if you want, but you're going to pay for fuel, you're going to pay for insurance, and so it's really about noise, braking, these things that they're concerned about. They're really not trying to kill the hobby. They just want to keep everybody safe. And so it's a budget. Again, how much money have you got?
As long as I can keep my sliding doors, I'll do anything.
There you go.
I'd like to thank you very much for joining me today. We have Jim and Liz Leggett from driving.ca. So a reminder that the auto show is open right through next Sunday. So it's open up until next Saturday, 10 a.m. to 9:30 p.m., which is a good stretch of the day. And then on Sunday, the 25th of January until 7 p.m. And you can also see everything you need to know about the auto show at the official website, which is salonautomontreal.com. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you soon.